Okay, that one's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and take a look at the...
Greetings. I am happy to manage your item cards.
Oh no, it's become self-aware. Hi, I'm Jeremy. Welcome to Steampunk Power-Ups, the show where we make awesome educational resources and experiences using technology and creativity. Today we're talking about character sheets on Google Sheets. We're making spreadsheets that show all sorts of character stats. This is the third episode in our series. The first two videos, we took a look at a walkthrough of my character sheet system, the skills tracker, the student view, the teacher view, all of those. Today we'll be looking at the functions of these sheets, what all the different parts are, what makes them work, what makes them tick, and that way if you need to change it, you need to make it your own, you can easily do that. So let's go ahead and take a look. So here I have up the character sheet teacher view. I mentioned in the first video that I used a Vlookup function to get this character sheet off the ground and then a data validation for the drop down. So just want to talk through real quick what the Vlookup does. So and then how I applied that to this sheet that was a little different than the other one. So on the other one, each one had a drop down and it just basically connected to a single table. In this one, it's basically a VLOOKUP of a VLOOKUP. So what it's going to do is this drop down here is going to populate all of your fields with the information from this player row. So if I'll look at player 1 here, it'll populate it with all of this information. Then what each of these fields is going to do, each of the ones that actually displays an image, it's going to reference that field and it's going to do a VLOOKUP on that, right? So notice here that this magical tome word is referencing C2. That's this cell right here. And so that's how it's getting that information. But the card here is looking at the magical tome, the G3. So it's VLOOKUPing here and then here. And then this will look at a different sheet. All of the words and everything are looking at the equipment sheet, right? And then I have the same set of words on the images page in order to find those. So if you look here for like the magical tome, if it's looking for this word, what it's going to do is look on the images page and it's going to look at this green chart here and it's going to go down until it finds magical tome and then it will go over to the next cell. So we can see how that works here, that it says VLOOKUP G3. Okay, so it's looking at right here, G3 for the references, and then it's saying go to the images page, so images, and then it's going to say look from starting at C2 down to D200, so that's the chart that it's looking at, and then it's going to look at the cell that's the second cell in the chart, right? So if I look here, it's going from C2 all the way down to 200, and it's going to look down once it finds magical tome over to the second cell. So pretty straightforward in terms of the application, but the trick here is that it's doing two, right? These are looking at the reference here, and then this is referencing that. So that's the VLOOKUP piece. This data chart here, this data drop down that I've got, that comes from a data validation, right? And this one, and then all of the ones on the equipment page, right? They're all a data validation. And basically all you need to do is you click on the cell that you want and you go to data validation, right? And then you tell what chart you want it to pull all of those words from. So you can see here, I'm telling it to pull from the images chart here, C2 to C200. So again, what it's going to do is it's going to go starting here all the way down to cell 200. It's going to take all of those words as its data validation, as its drop down filler, which is why if I want to add a word here, if I want to add an item card, I can type that name in here and it should pop up right in the drop down. So let's go ahead and try that because I actually have an item card that I could add right now. So I've got, let's not do that. Let's do the Sword of Heroism. I'm going to save the baby dragon for a minute. So here's the Sword of Heroism, or the heroic sword. And oops, I don't want to go to Google Drawing. So here's the heroic sword. I'm going to go to the publish to web and I'm going to get that link out of there. And that I'm going to insert into the links page right here, the item links. So I'm going to put it right here in the item links for that. So Control V. Okay, and then what that will do is it should make that image pop in right there. So we'll give it a second to do that. Let me make this bigger so you can see it. So there we go. There's the sword. And then I'll just name it heroic. Actually, I'll just call it sword. Okay, so I'll call it sword. And now what should happen is in that equipment page, I should have available on my drop down the sword. Boom. And I should be able to populate it right there into the character sheet. Good to go. Okay. Let's see. As long as we're at that, so there's your data validation, and then kind of how it connects to this whole thing, right? You can tell it what chart to use, and then the VLOOKUP looks up the image that goes with it. So as long as we're talking about that, let's talk about how this little piece works. Notice here that when I pasted the link in this spot, the image popped up over here. Now this little piece of code I got from a guy named Fabian Hoffman. He looked at my Gen 1 sheet and then made some modifications and changes to it. And one thing about doing images with Google Sheets is it's kind of finicky. It kind of drops the images or misplaces the images, or I don't know, weird things happen with it sometimes. And so this is kind of a nice way around that. What this does is it substitutes the information in the cell with the image in the link, right? So it says in this case that for D2 it's looking at N12, and it's going to open that, and then it's going to put that image in the place of where the link would be. So pretty slick, pretty cool. So that's how that works, and it's really handy because when I went to do the student view of this, I could populate all of this information in with a VLOOKUP, or I'm sorry, not a VLOOKUP, with an import range, which we'll get to that in a minute, and it works really well. And versus normally if you use an import range on images, it doesn't work super great. So let's go ahead and look at maybe adding one more image. So I want to add, I've been working on this pets thing, so I want to add a pet, right? Because I've got that baby dragon there, and he's pretty cute. So we're going to add that. He's actually going to be, he'll be showing up later. So we'll go to our publish to the web, and we'll publish that guy. And we'll get that link. Okay, and then we can insert it in here. And then my baby dragon should pop up there. And we'll give it a second. I think I actually already gave player one a dragon there, so there we go. It's not playing nice. Sometimes that happens, so let's try again. And there it goes. It just took a minute. Okay, so there's my baby dragon now, and now he should show up for player one as a baby dragon card. So there we go. Okay, so that's inserting images and how to do that. So you can delete all these links off when you go ahead and make a copy of these sheets. I don't know if I mentioned that in other videos, but if you want these, they're all down in the schematics down there. And if you want your own, you just go File and make a copy. Otherwise, it won't let you edit it or anything because it'll just be for view only. So let's go ahead and talk about the import range function here as long as I'm at it. That's what allows me to pull all this information off of the other sheets and off of like Mr. Matera's gamification database and all of that fun stuff. So the import range function is great. What it does is it says, okay, I'm going to look at a cell. So it's going to be looking at cell A1 here. And I'm going to look at the link in that cell, and then I'll pull the information according to what it says on that link. So this is linked to this gamification database. And what it's going to do is it's going to read the specific cells. So this is looking at the leaderboard, right? And it's going to import range N4 to P200. And so it pulls all that information over, and it works super great. And this is the same function that I use to pull the data from my skills sheet here. So if you look here, let's unhide that. The import range for this one is right here, and it's looking at this summary page on my skills sheet. So here's my skills tracker. It's going to the summary page, and it's looking at A2 to let's see, probably K200. Looks like, yep, A2 to K200, and it's just pulling all that information over and putting it right in the document. So it's a really, really helpful function. Once you have pulled information in from other sheets, though, it's helpful to maybe not have to use the import range again. I mean, you could reuse that same link over and over again, or you could make it equal to that link and do that same function. That works. But another thing, once you're in the same sheet, is this helpful little piece of information here. If you do an equal sign and then throw your page you're looking for in curly brackets, in these little set brackets, so in this case the equipment page, and then you tell it the starting cell and then just the name of the whole column, it'll pull that whole column over. So notice here, this equipment A2A will pull all of the entire column for the equipment from the equipment page for A2A. So it pulls over all this 1, 2, 3, 4, so on and so forth. So I don't have to retype that. I can just hit equals and do all that. And then that's really nice because then it has the same exact everything in every spot. So that's great. So we'll see, we've looked at images. I think that's it for this one. Let's look at the skills tracker. There's a function I want to show you guys here on the skills tracker, and that is the transpose function. When you're going from vertical to horizontal data on a sheet, it can be kind of interesting because a sheet likes to work downward, but it doesn't really like to add and do things horizontally as much. So for this one, what I did is looking at the game level, I wanted that data to run horizontally so I could use kind of the nice typical VLOOKUP there. So I did the same thing that I just showed you on the other one. I did the data C1C, so copy that column over, but then I wanted that to be run horizontally. So I used a function called transpose, and what that does is it takes vertical data and it moves it horizontal. So this transpose function took, for this one, did C2 to C7 and took that data and put it horizontally. And so now I've got all of my information all nice and sorted there. As long as I'm talking about data, let's go ahead and look at the game level stats here. So for these, I mentioned them in another video, and I talked about what's happening here is these two cells are subtracting each other, and then it's dividing. And I was thinking, well, maybe people don't want to do that. Maybe they would just want it to be equal to a cell, or maybe they would want to do some other function. So I wanted to show you that because this can actually be really, really helpful. So if, let's say I just wanted it to be the same as whatever the current level is, all I would need to do is, actually I could just hit an equal sign and then click that cell and it would show up there, and then hit enter. Okay. Equal, click enter, or you could type it in too, that works. Right? But once you've done a couple of these, like I said, spreadsheets really like to run down a lot. And so you can copy and paste and it will figure out pretty quickly what you want. So I noticed it was changing my formatting and I didn't want to do that. So that's why I'm not doing the copying and pasting like I just said you could do, but I'll demonstrate that in a second. So what I've got here is now I've got my game level is the same as whatever the current level is. And now what I can do is I can copy that whole section and I can paste it in the next section down, and it figures it out, right? It figured out, oh, I'm just going to pull that information over. Or if there's some sort of operation that I want done, maybe I'm okay with it being the same value, but I don't want it to be to deal with hundreds. Maybe I just want to deal with single digits. So maybe I could just divide it by 100 instead. So I can do that for each of these. And then it'll give me that nice single digit number that I'm after. And just like when I copied and pasted a second ago and it understood what I was doing, it will do the same thing again, even with a little bit of division thrown in there. It will look over and it'll check, and it works really, really nicely. So that's another thing that's really helpful. Okay, so last thing here is on the student view. Now this one I showed you guys in the last video a few things, and for this one I've done the exact same import range, and I've done that for every one of these pages. But the thing that I wanted to point out about this sheet is it's the exact same functions on these character sheets as on the teacher view. Just the only difference is that data is being pulled in with an import range. So all of this is calculating all of this. And I don't mind it being accessible by students because they can't edit anything because it's a view only. So that's kind of a nice another little thing there. The last thing I wanted to show you on the student view here is I showed you how to add a page before, but I didn't show you how to add a link. So I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do that here real quick. Because in the last video we added, there we go, up to cell 132, but we didn't add the link for it. So all we need to do to add a link is to right click and hit insert link, and then we can hit sheets in the spreadsheet and scroll down to good old P132 there, clickety click, apply, and I like them bolded, so I think I'll bold it. Okay, and now that link should take me right to that page, and I don't have to have students super scrolling through. So that's it. I think those are the main functions that I wanted to show you guys here on my spreadsheets and how they work, and that should give you a little bit of knowledge that you need in order to make this all work. So with that then, let's go ahead and talk outro. So there were 2 videos in this series that we haven't looked at, or that I mentioned, right there. So there's a part 1, which is kind of a walkthrough showing you all of this. There's a part 2, which is an unboxing. It shows you how to link all this together. And then there's this one, the part 3, that shows how to do the functions. I don't know if I really mentioned it in this video, but in order to really get the most out of these, you're going to want to have Michael Matera's gamification database. So you're going to need to go to mrmatera.com and purchase that guy. And then for I just wanted to shout out a thanks to Fabian Hoffman, because he helped with that little piece of code that was really helpful with the images. So if you want to follow him, you can follow him at Hoffman Edu. He's also got a podcast that's really great called Finding Our Tribe, so give that a listen. Mr. Matera has a podcast too, actually, by the way. He has lots of stuff. And then if you want to follow me on the Twitter, I'm Mr. Cedarquist. So if you would be so kind as to like the video, if you so liked it, if you would be so kind as to put a comment down there in the boiler room, and if you would subscribe to the channel, that would be extremely helpful to me. Otherwise, that's it for this video, and go out and create something awesome.